Very good.
We will call to order this regular meeting of the Easton Board of Education at 10:03 a.m. on January 22nd, 2022. All members in attendance. Our agenda today will be a presentation from our superintendent of the proposed budget that has been built by the administration, Dr. McKinnon, in partnership with our senior personnel in central office, as well as our building leaders, have spent quite a bit of time putting together this budget. They're going to take us through a PowerPoint presentation, and then after the PowerPoint presentation detailing the components of the budget that they built for 22-23, we'll receive a spreadsheet that will help us to navigate the specific numbers. And then we'll come, just for the benefit of the public and everyone else, we'll come back in early February. We have a regular Tuesday meeting, which will be a budget workshop. And that same week we have that Thursday, we'll have another budget workshop. And in those sessions, we'll have the opportunity to really dig in and ask questions and talk about our priorities and make sure that this is representative of sort of what the board feels are the priorities, along with the partnership of our superintendent and our administrators. Good. So with that, we'll move to presentation of the 22-23 proposed operating budget by Dr. McKinnon.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Well, good morning, Board of Education members, faculty and staff, and parents tuning in from home, community members, and our leaders who joined us on a Saturday. I really appreciate you being here today. We're honored to present the Easton District's 2022-2023 Superintendent's proposed budget. This education is an investment in human capital, and a school budget reflects our educational values and defines our priorities each year. Perhaps you've wondered if educational dollars allocated towards schools make a difference. I can assure you that they do. I'm fond of stating key points when communicating to the public and to you in emails and writing about different topics. Here are some key points from researchers on the topic of money, inputs, and Board of Education budgets. School inputs make a difference in education, and they are positively associated to student achievement. There is a strong relationship between school resources and school outcomes. A teacher's education and their qualifications is linked to student outcomes as well. That's why we work so hard when we look at a teacher's qualifications, their step increases next year, their qualifications in terms of master's degrees and so on. And some instructional strategies are more effective than others. So the final point that I made about effectiveness is really important. We are committed to not spend money on things that aren't working. And we do not want to spend more if less is just as effective. Therefore, a budget and adequate resources is just one leg of a three-legged stool. The second leg is a strong strategic plan that allows us to plan into the future. And the third leg emphasizes highly effective classroom practices in our schools and classrooms that we need to emphasize. So following this, a brief introduction, I will be sharing the proposed budget in these sections. Section 1 will look at the new budget model. Section 2 will define our main drivers. Section 3 will talk a little bit about our cost center summary and new staff. And Section 4 will get into the actual budget numbers and the proposed for next year. And then we'll be talking a little bit about next steps. First, we want to remind everyone that our schools have not been immune to the pandemic. There have been major disruptions to student learning during the past 2 years. And during this time, there have been also some incredible innovations in technology and in distance learning. But we all understand that distance learning does not replace in-person learning. Consider for a moment there have been approximately 90 days of remote learning, and approximately 500 students and staff members have been placed on quarantine, some more than once. The loss of in-person learning, even when replaced by synchronous or asynchronous learning, has impacted student achievement. We presented these data to you in October. At the time, ELA scores dipped in Easton by 5%. Our internal intervention data shows that more students are struggling in some areas and that referrals to special education services have increased. Certainly, our younger students have needed more time to settle into the classroom routines, and some of them are quite dysregulated, which has impacted their ability to access the curriculum. In these cases, we've had to shift resources this year and define where we're providing support for those students next year. The achievement decline in mathematics was more acute than English language arts. In Reading, the math achievement declined by 9%. In Easton, math achievement declined by 7.3%. And our Derg neighbours declined approximately 12%. These data are over 7 months old, but our fall assessment data painted a similar picture. And you may be wondering, have students gained ground since returning to school? And at what point will they fully recover those 5% and 9% losses, respectively? We are currently studying these trends to see if they continue in our schools. January is typically an important assessment month. In short, we intend to study our benchmark assessment data that we should have by the end of this month, and we can provide an update to you soon on student achievement. I'd like to transition now a little bit and talk about how COVID has impacted other than the classroom. It has also transformed the workplace. According to the World Economic Report, our companies are making changes to the way they work, and some of you may have noticed those changes yourselves in the private sector. 83% of companies offer some type of remote work currently. Most are accelerating digitalization and automation, and these changes will have an impact on jobs and skills that our students will need in the future. It stands to reason that our classrooms will need to make adjustments to reflect these changes, and our strategic plans and goals are even more important to prepare students to meet these changing areas. In the next 3 to 4 years alone, there'll be a growing demand for data analytics, digital marketing, and automation, and decreasing demands for clerks, administrative work, factory work, and management. So these changes are probably not a big surprise to us, but it does mean that we need our learners to be more agile, think critically, collaborate, and work independently. And I've been impressed with the district's emphasis on transfer of learning. It will mean that we provide students with more opportunities for project-based learning and authentic experiences in the near future. I'm eager to help the district focus on these areas by breaking learning into measurable steps while also emphasizing effective practices in the classroom. I just wanted to show you a short video which makes the points that I've been making over the past couple of slides.
My belief is in the next 10 to 15 years, there's likely to be a net loss of jobs. That is because the speed at which routine jobs are being displaced will be faster than the speed at which new jobs will be created. Tasks that are repetitive in nature, that don't require deep thoughts, strategic creative thinking, those are the jobs that are most in danger. And on the other hand, if we look at the longer term, maybe 20 to 30 years, that doesn't account for the many jobs that will be invented and created. But it's unfortunate that we can't quite predict what those jobs are. Just like if we went back to 1995 and asked me what jobs would be created by the internet, there's no way I would have listed Uber driver.
So how do workers future-proof themselves for jobs that don't yet exist?
We don't know what the specific new jobs are going to be, but I think we do know the kinds of skills that people are going to need. Some of those are soft skills in terms of knowing how to work with other people, in terms of knowing how to learn to do new things. And some of them are harder skills, whether that's in a particular industry, with a particular technology.
Thank you. So
What's going to
just a short snippet. It's a fascinating series on PBS. I encourage you all to watch it. So if these challenges exist, preparing for students for jobs in 2030 means that we need to emphasize specific skills now. And you can see in the 2030 column, the top areas are helping students understand decision-making, being more active in their learning, understanding learning strategies and being able to self-regulate themselves to use appropriate strategies, an emphasis on problem solving and analysis. And I'm highlighting these areas because we need to build these skills into our classrooms now, but also work on a strategic plan to ensure students learn these valuable skills for the future. And if you're asking why is this conversation happening in a budget conversation, it's because we need to make sure that we are aligning our financial investments to the vision of the future. So a strategic plan starts with a clear vision and mission. By asking these questions, what should the ideal school look like? What skills and dispositions should graduating students be able to demonstrate? We can identify the soft skills that students need to be successful, deploy resources to emphasize transfer of learning in more ways, and build a 3-year budget plan that commits to this vision rather than budgeting around the typical fiscal pressures that we see each year. So our priorities, and I'd like to continue to support these, are that we're committed to academic excellence, and these are those high impact instructional strategies and commitment to transfer of learning that we were talking about previously. Those include having clear learning intentions for students in the classroom, defining what success looks like for children so that they can actually take greater ownership over their own learning, assess student learning with high quality benchmarks and provide feedback to students on their learning, increase student critical thinking, promote rich discussion and learning in the classroom as well. These things are simple but highly focused. And as discussed in the previous slides, our students continue to be, need to be future ready. So we have to embed the 2030 critical thinking skills in our classrooms and support student engagement and enrichment in those areas as well. And finally, define and support the development of those soft skills that will prepare students for the changes and rigor of the job market while also building a caring community. We do have to present the benefit of presenting later in the month of January, and we are seeing school district budgets that are being presented this year in the 4 to 5% range. And I think districts, in talking with my colleagues, are impacted by the same inflationary environment that we are in terms of increase in utility prices that impact transportation and heating costs and so on. And then school districts are having to invest more in intervention services and special education to meet students where they need, based on the data that we're seeing, a decline in student achievement, but also more students are dysregulated in the area of behavior management. Having said that, we remain committed to the following goals. While we have to face the ongoing pressures of contractual increases in salaries and benefits, reduced state funding and increases in transportation and utility, we are committed to allocate grant funds to reduce operation expenses. We plan to create a multi-year budget plan that promotes financial sustainability once we start identifying what our strategic plans look like, and develop a strategic plan that reduces initiatives and thinks more about our ROI, which is a return on investment, and finally focus on those high-level practices. So thank you for letting me provide that introduction, and now we're going to get into the budget model. And in this next section, we'll talk about ways in which you can ask questions, talk about the new ways the budget has been organized this year, we'll talk about a cost center overview, the budget book, and new tools that are available. So board members will be able to ask questions during the process. Sarah Scafani will be sending you an email, or maybe has sent you an email already. You can open that question form in your document, and as you go through the process, you can ask a question, put it in that form, and we'll be able to get back to you with the answers. We'll also be sending this question form to our Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen members as well. So for the past couple of months, we've been working on a new way to present the budget to you. Take it from educators. We know that adults and students learn when they process information more efficiently when it's organized into categories. So we've taken what can best be described as a phone book and organized all of those accounts into predictable cost centers. These cost centers and the way in which we've rearranged these cost centers will allow for increased monitoring and control, increased accountability and efficiency, and quite simply, you'll be able to find information more easily than we were in the past. The cost centers will include schools, special education, facilities, technology, district-wide, curriculum and instruction, and central office. Just a quick overview of what's contained in each cost center. So in the school cost center, you'll see the information organized into 3 categories: certified staff, non-certified staff, and operations. You'll also see other areas like other payments, where we define stipends, and different accounts where we look at instruction and operations, things like instruction supplies, dues and fees, and so on. In the district-wide cost center, you'll see employee benefits, where we've described our operation expenses, food services, transportation, and utilities, and areas like legal, audit, and fees. In our facilities cost center, you'll see building and maintenance contracts, cleaning and repair, liability insurance, supplies, special projects, and so on. In the special education cost center, again, you see certified staff, non-certified staff, operations, but also professional services, where we've budgeted money for tuition and outplacements, transportation, technology supplies. In the technology cost center, you will see some salaries of our technicians, management software like PowerSchool and Google, instructional software that facilitate learning in the classroom, hardware, Chromebooks, laptops, interactive whiteboards, and so on. And in the curriculum instruction and cost center, you'll see curriculum work that happens over the summer, professional services, professional textbooks, and so on. So we're excited to publish a new budget book in the next few days. And this budget book will be available to you as we lead up to the board workshops that Mr. Stinson described at the beginning of the meeting. And this new model will be more user-friendly and include the following features: an executive summary, a detailed staff report, student enrollment, grant information, program information, and various budget insights and budget sheets that you're typically accustomed to receiving. We're also in the process of developing a budget website, and the budget website will also include budget sheets and presentation materials, important dates, and a place for the community and you to ask questions and receive updates as well. So moving on to the main budget drivers, we'll talk a little bit about expenditure by category, what the main budget drivers are, and touch on student enrollment. So educational budgets are predominantly comprised of our talented teachers, our leaders, and our support staff that run and lead our schools. Approximately 75 to 80% of our budgets go towards salaries and benefits. And you can see there that other purchase services account for approximately 12% of the budget, transportation and special education. And other categories also make up approximately 12% of the budget, which include professional services, equipment, central office, and property services. Our main budget drivers next year are really captured in this slide. You can see health insurance going up by approximately 5.27%. We can provide more information about the analysis that Brown & Brown has provided in future workshops. That number doesn't reflect, the Brown & Brown estimate, for example, does not reflect the additional Board of Education contributions that you make at the end of the year. For example, at the end of this year, you committed $343,000 to the employee benefit account. So Brown & Brown recommends 7% increase. We're able to factor that in at a 5.27 increase. District-wide transportation has increased by approximately 3%. Special education transportation has increased by approximately 40%. And that is as a result of some outplacements, some in-district transportation, adding additional aids to buses, and so on. Special education as a cost center has increased overall by 6.7%, and our facilities area has increased by approximately 2.9%. Next year, there are contractual increases for our administrators and our teachers. These contracts are bargained and approved by the board. You can see that administrators their contract is going up approximately 2%, and our teachers next year, for 2022, 2023, you'll see a 2.9%. Our non-certified contracts include our custodians and our support staff. Custodian contract is going up 2.25%. Our support staff, including secretaries and paraprofessionals, also going up by 2.25%. This slide is a brief overview of our projected enrollment. And as you know, class size and class sections takes into consideration input from building administration regarding current academic needs, social emotional needs of each student. This information is based on our October 1 numbers that we submit to the state, and also from our demographer, Dr. Browder, who provides projections for next year. More detailed enrollment data will be contained in our budget book, and it was also presented to you earlier this month. A budget alert on this slide. Grade 2 is recommended for 6 sections next year, which will equal approximately 17 students per classroom. So in section 3, this is where we really get into each cost center. And our first cost center is Samuel Staples Elementary School. We'll be providing you with a handout after this meeting. I realize this slide is difficult to see, and you obviously get the budget sheet, and this will be on our website as well. The total cost center increase for Samuel Staples next year is 3.1%, which represents about 27% of the overall Easton budget. The total cost center represents an investment of approximately $5 million. Just the highlights of this particular cost center: certified staff is increasing 4.7%. That also includes the grade 2 position that we've just talked about, increasing the section size, also based on enrollment. The other areas, there's an area that you see there for certified other payments that has an 18% increase. You'll see that as a result of a VERIC payment for $17,000 in that area. Instructional paraprofessionals is going down 21%, and that's because we tied a paraeducator to a Title I fund grant. So that's an example of how we've used a grant to offset operations. The next cost center is Colleen Keller Middle School. The total cost center represents a 4.75% increase, which represents approximately 19% of the overall Easton budget. You'll see here that certified staff has actually increased by about 0.5%. That's because we hired a counselor at a lower rate. Certified staff other payments, you'll also see an increase there of approximately 59%, and that is as a result of a VERIC payment. An instructional paraeducator line, there will be an increase there of about 8.5%. And that is because a PE paraprofessional was not reflected in the 21-22 budget. Also added in the non-instructional para budget is an increase. Oh,
Sorry, just briefly, is there a printed copy? I think a few people are having trouble, but see, even the larger text on the left can be a little bit tough to read. Are there printed copies that folks could?
Yes, I can give you a printed copy, but it's the entire presentation.
Okay.
With the big reveal at the end. Would you like that?
Yeah, if it's possible.
Okay.
I promise not to flip ahead.
If you promise not to move ahead.
Yeah. We'll stay with you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We do apologize. All right, so I was on the Colleen Keller slide and talking about the key points. One of the key points in non-instructional paras was an increase of 37,000 because we added the security officer to this line, and so that was a move from a different location. There's also some other increases for instructional books, materials, and equipment was an increase of $7,000. So you'll see an increase there for Kiln and some additional library shelving. The next cost center is special education. This total cost center represents a 6.73% increase, which represents about 20% of the overall Easton budget. Just some key areas here is that the excess cost reimbursement was reduced by the state by approximately $8,500, or a reduction of 10%. We see an increase in certified teachers of approximately 15%, where we've expanded the Junior Bridge program. Again, in certified other claimants, we'll see an increase of BERIP, which is our retirement incentive, of approximately $34,000. And you'll see a decrease in tuition and outplacement of approximately $100,000. We'll pause on this in later budget workshops, but right here you can see the relationship between investing in the Junior Bridge program and providing a teacher and a significant decrease in tuition and outplacement of $100,000. So there is definitely a correlation between those two things. And the other major impact to this cost center is an increase in transportation for approximately $90,000. The next cost center is facilities, which has an increase of approximately 2.9% budget to budget, which represents a little over 2% of the overall Easton budget. Maintenance contracts are going down by approximately $12,000. Disposal services are going up by approximately $20,000 because trash removal was actually missing from the 21 and 22 current year's budget, so you see a reduction. Another change will be the addition of a non-certified position. We're adding a facilities manager, K-12, which will be shared among the 3 districts, and you'll see an increase there of $29,000. We can provide more information about the shared facilities manager in the coming workshops, but this position will reside in the facilities cost center, again, approximately 20. As I just pointed out, other professional services will experience a decrease because we moved the security officer to Helen Keller Middle School out of this cost center. The technology cost center is showing on average an 8% increase, which represents about 2.5% of the Easton overall budget. Management software is increasing by approximately $7,000 for Power School and Google. And we don't think that Google was adequately funded in this year's budget, so it's reflecting an increase next year. Instructional software in each school, you see an increase of approximately $39,000. Instructional software covers items like textbook subscriptions and software. And there's a hardware increase of approximately $49,000, and that's to replace some end-of-life Chromebooks, some laptops, interactive whiteboards, and so on. The district-wide cost center represents a 3.7% increase next year. This actually accounts for a quarter of the Easton budget. Medical insurance, as I discussed earlier, is an increase of approximately 5.3%. Transportation is going up approximately 3%. Legal and audit services is showing an increase of approximately $18,000. And that's because the Brown & Brown broker fee was moved out of the technology account into the district-wide cost center. We think that is where it should belong. Now, the curriculum and instruction budget is a little misleading at a 98% increase next year, but that's really the reinstatement of some summer work that was cut in April last year. The increase accounts for less than 0.5 of the Easton budget, or about 4% of the overall recommended decrease budget to budget next year. And that is really representing some summer work for curriculum, some conference and training, a tri-state visit that was delayed this year, which is put into next year's budget, and other consultants. The central office cost center is really an increase next year of approximately 0.5%. It accounts for about 3.75% of the overall Easton budget. And there's some movement of some salary lines in this cost center. The previous budget, the previous business manager, there's a reduction of a 403B contribution, a pension reduction, and this cost center also includes some legal and some audit services as well. This slide shows some new staff, just a kind of a new staff overview. That's certified staff, Samuel Staples. We're adding that section of second grade based on student need. There's a change in the assistant principal position negotiated up from 11 to 12 months. Non-certified staff, we're looking at adding support staff and interventions, a math para at Colleen Keller. And this will also be funded by our ESSA funds and will be a short-term position, so it's budget neutral. And we talked about the addition of the facilities manager, which is driven by the critical need for oversight of our building maintenance and infrastructure. I think teachers, principals, and district leaders tend to agree that districts have too many initiatives, but it's sometimes very difficult to scale back. I've only been in the district for 4 months. And so I think those 4 months have enabled us to think really about what the resources we have. The next few months are really critical, getting back to the idea of developing that strategic plan that looks at the next 3 years and aligns our vision, mission, our goals, our priorities to a plan that moves us into the future. In the short term, the proposed staff requests really support the current needs in response to the pandemic, the current needs of aging buildings, and I really see them in the top left quadrant, representing lower cost, but scalable impact on overall operations and student achievement. So in this next section, we'll talk a little bit about the budget object summary, and we'll get into the final numbers. At the front of the budget sheet that you will receive momentarily, you will see what we are calling as the master roll-up. All cost centers are reflected in this one place. You will see the 2021, 2022 approved budget, 2022, 2023 proposed budget, the overall dollar increase, the percent increase, and you'll be able to evaluate each cost center as it relates to the entire budget. We will provide more information about the master roll-up and its various features in a tutorial following the budget presentation. So in summary, the 2022-2023 proposed superintendent budget is $18,344,641, which reflects $783,498 increase over the approved 21-22 budget, or approximately a 4.55%. We believe this budget supports our commitment to academic excellence, building caring students, staff, and communities, and ensures that our students are future ready with a strong platform that builds towards 2030. So in order to get to this point, I'd like to thank Mrs. Vicky Cram, who is our human resources, providing us with detailed information about what our staff changes are for next year. Mr. Scott Petrozelli, our Director of Finance and Operations, for helping us put certain pieces together. Dr. Pearson Hugo, who really has the big picture in mind always. I'm so grateful for your leadership. Mrs. Sarah Scrofani, she helped us redesign the budget into the current cost center module and helping us develop a digital platform that will enable us to really analyze the budget in the future. I'd like to thank each of our district leaders who are here today and those who aren't joining us, maybe joining us from home, Dr. Platt, Mr. Moore, Mr. Jennifer Conte, and thank you. And thank you for joining. Very much. The next step will be publishing a budget book and sharing a website with everybody. We'll be producing a Q&A document based on question themes, and we'll be having various budget workshops with the Board of Education. And there are some key dates for you to pay attention to at home. February 8th is a regular meeting, February 10th is a budget workshop, and so on, leading all the way up to May 3rd, which is the annual referendum. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. That concludes the superintendent's portion of the budget presentation.
Thank you, Dr. McKinn.
Thank you. Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? No? Okay.
I will say, I think this is the best budget presentation I've ever seen in our district. So it was very clear, very helpful. I'm sure we'll argue the details in the next month or two, but it was really, really helpful. So thank you for putting so much time, everybody, not just Dr. McKinnon, but it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Any questions about anything that we've seen so far? I know there's a lot to digest there, and that was like drinking from a fire hose, but you know, the intent is that we get all the supporting documentation and the ability to navigate that, you know, on our own ahead of our budget workshops, and that we take that opportunity to come to that February set of meetings to prepare to dive in. Dr. McKinnon, are we now shifting to the, yeah, of course.
So for the different grants, you said there would be a breakdown that will be in the overall budget online. I don't want to call it budget book. But
I think we're going to include that as a section in our budget book.
okay.
And we can also include that in our website as well. We're starting to put that information together for you. And it will also be a tab in a budget sheet, in the budget Google sheet that we provide as well. So you'll be able to see the allocation of various grant funds. And I would show you that, but my browser has frozen at the moment. So I'm just okay, I think we're back. All right, so now we can spend this part of the presentation is really less formal. It's an opportunity to provide some high-level navigation strategies for the sheet that you will receive today. And so I'll do part of this, and then Mrs. Scrofani will also share some part. And Sarah, you can actually, when it's time, well, maybe you can come up and use my laptop. Okay. So this is the master roll-up sheet that you, which is absolutely essential. So whenever you delve into the budget, or whenever we make a change anywhere in the budget, even if we change $10 in an instructional account line at one of the schools, it automatically rolls up instantly to reflect an overall change in the budget percentage. Okay. So this sheet's called the master roll-up, and there are various ways you can navigate to each cost center. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see. It's still difficult, but we will email this to you in a moment. You can click on a link and it will take you to the individual cost center. And then once you get to this cost center, you'll be able to see the breakdown for certified staff, non-certified staff, instruction and operations, and so on. And once you get to this cost center, you can go down an additional link. And for example, if you wanted to see teachers. And this is the format that you've seen, that you maybe have seen in the past. We've still grouped and rearranged this data into a more user-friendly format. But all of the information is here, all of the data is behind. So at this point, you can go use the back arrow and you can get back to a cost center. There are also these three lines at the bottom left of the cost center. And all of the cost centers are here, they're color-coded. So any cost center you need to go to, you can click here. For example, if you wanted to go back to the proposed budget, you could do that. If you wanted to go to a particular cost center, let's say you want to go now to district-wide, you can select and you can go to district-wide. From district-wide, if you wanted to delve into any particular area, let's say we wanted to take a close look at medical insurance or certified workers, you can see medical insurance reflected in the various accounts. At the top of each cost center, you'll see a summary, little dashboard there that shows certified medical, what the change is from last year to this year, the change in the dollar increase. You can click on that link can take you back to district-wide. That's another way of getting there. Again, or you can go into this tab at the bottom to show where to go. So going back to the master roll-up again, takes you here. If you wanted to go into pupil services, you can click on that tab. And then from there, it's the same strategy. You click an area where you want to go, and you'll go. The other way, you will also see tabs across the bottom as well. So if you're sliding across it there, you could also click on that way. So there's multiple ways to get to each cost center and to delve down into additional layer.
And we can't like accidentally break this by changing numbers or anything.
No, we're gonna provide this to you, and we're gonna lock it down so that you can't change any data. Because it does happen. We're working on the budget presentation and we see something go up or down, and it's because someone in a school has made a change. The other day, I was concerned about a change, and Sarah came in and said, "Well, actually, that was you." So it can happen, and it will happen. So we will lock it down when we send it to you. We will provide the public more of a surface level view to begin with, so they can see the cost center and go down one layer. We will provide you with the ability to see all the layers. And as we get to the budget workshop, we will increase access to the public as we go through the process and as we start answering questions.
And if any board member wanted the PDF version of this or a printout version of this, that's easy, right?
That is easy. It's kind of what you have right now. We have additional handouts here that actually go deeper. If you wanted to go back and use a highlighter and a pencil, and you want to do it that way, we can provide it with you that way as well.
Good.
So that is kind of an overview of each cost center. Here's the grants tab, which I don't think we'll talk about now, but we've created a grants tab and we've allocated where grant monies are allocated. And so that's an overview of the budget sheet that you'll get. Sarah, would you like to talk a little bit about the website?
Absolutely. It's published, so you can actually take a look at it. Let me just see.
Did you share it with me? Right.
I did.
Okay.
You're an editor, so.
Now we'll change that.
Well, we don't have to change that. So this is the website that will go to the public.
Somebody's having trouble. It's not showing on the Zoom person, the website.
Yeah, it wouldn't be because I don't have it here. So if you share it with me, then I can
will
share it on the Zoom.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
do that. Let me give you.
Thank you.
Let me do that right now.
One sort of big picture question that we think about, and it's hard because we've migrated the budget structure two years in a row now, but it's comparing actual to sort of where we're going. And we're only halfway through this year, so that's incrementally difficult. But the question becomes, can we take a swag at what we're actually spending in the key line items and correlate it to what we propose to spend? Because the last several years we've had budgets, we spent $500,000 less than we budgeted, and yet we go in with a 3% call it increase, and the town will say, "Well, gee whiz, you didn't spend what you spent last year, so why the?"
No, I think that's a key point, and we've talked about that. I think there's a couple of complicating factors that you pointed out. One is we changed from our budget software from Phoenix to eFinance Plus, and then also previous business manager changed some formatting of accounts. So it does make apples to apples more challenging. And then, of course, as you pointed out, we're currently in this year. So if we were 12 months from now, we would have actual level data to a high degree of confidence with the way in which we've organized the accounts. We might be able to upload the presentation that you've seen today and all of the accounts back into eFinance Plus to try to do an actual comparison. So to the extent that's possible, and whether that's we have a high degree of confidence that we're actually getting the apple to apple comparison, we will get back to you before the next budget workshop.
Maybe just to make it easier, sort of, if we look at the main drivers to this budget, we look at a handful of categories and line items that are driving this budget increase, right? And then we compare that to actual today and incumbent. Right, so the object summary that we get at each meeting has sort of a swag on where we're going with encumbrances. Maybe we
can explore that. Maybe, yes.
cut corners if you can.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
I like that.
The other piece, which I'm guessing that is going to be part of it, is the detail behind teachers. For instance, at San Jose State was at a 4.70% increase. Now we know there's a new teacher in there, and I just threw out a number of $6,000 for that spitball on it, which we took our 2.7 down to, our 4.7 down to 2.1.
Right.
So that's going to be very significant from the Board of Finance as well as the public to really understand how did we get to these percentages.
Right. Yeah, so 2.9 is, that's contract.
And it's close.
I think it's actually exactly the contract, no? 2.9 this year, right?
Yeah, it's a little.
So when we go into Staples,
Well, you know what, it really depends on how many people went through from 15 to 6.
That's right.
6%, so.
That's right. At least in the presentation, I think the number was 2.9 for the contract increase.
Okay,
So that may be all in, we'll dive into that.
okay.
I sent you the link to the website.
Okay, thank you.
So if you just would click on that.
Yep.
That would be great.
and Jeff, kind of what you're saying there is that you'll be able to get that level of data from in the cost center. So you'll see what's not in the handout that you have in front of you. This is kind of the level of data that you're looking for. Right? The differences, the last year positions, this year's positions, the number of teachers, and so on. So you can get that data. You will seek access to that data right now.
And just one clarifying question. When we put together the retirement package for 3 years, the plan was to do 2 years, basically one payment in 20, one payment in 21, so like a June, July. And so we would just have one more payment to go. And the slide said the second payment, which would indicate that didn't happen.
Right. This should be 3 of 3, not 2.
So it should be 3 of 3 rather
That's
than
right.
2 of 3.
We did one payment on the VERA in the first, sort of during that budget year, and then the first part of the next budget year.
Right.
So we should only have one payment remaining.
Well, that was the plan, and whether that happened or not is.
Right.
Okay, I can definitely make a note and check that it's and verify that it's
If we're,
Payment 3 of 3.
if we're missing a garbage pickup at a school, it's certainly possible.
Right.
Some other stuff that it's funny, it's one of the questions I had asked.
All right, so this
One
is,
is 0, and the other one is 21.
this is what the website will look like at this time for the public, with the key dates. This is the presentation that you just were able to participate in right over here. everything just pops right out. So at the top on the right-hand side, when you click on something, it'll pop up, it'll pop open. Over on the side are all the tabs for the cost centers. I'll be emailing to the board to you in a few moments, which has all of the drilled down detail. But up online is phase one, where you'll see each one of these cost centers comes up as a little page. And again, these all pop out for everybody. So that is an overview of the website, budget website for right now. And I'll email everyone a copy of this so that you can take a moment to play around with it, take a look at it, and ask any technical questions. Included in this is when you're in this document, there is a filter view. And so one of the pages just says index when you're looking at it. And the filter view looks a little bit like an oil pan, I think, upside down. So that's the filters. And then I created some filter views for each cost center. So it'll take everything that has, everything that's in a cost center, and it's just a spreadsheet of all that information. But if you want to just say, I want to see everything in one place that's included in Helen Keller, there's a filter view. You'll click on it. It'll say the word Helen Keller. You click on that and it will show you all of the things just in that particular cost center. So I think that will help with some of doesn't show the actuals, but it will compare what was budgeted last year to this year. In the same, for those same.
That might cut the number of questions in half.
That's right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, and exactly, and allow you to quickly just go to the thing you're curious about. I wonder if
There's also a search feature as well. And so to search, if you want to find anything, just on your, so there is a button under edit and find. And the key here is that you want to make sure that it says all the sheets and not just a particular sheet that you're looking at. So if you wanted to find, for example, find Aquarian. If I just look on this sheet, I obviously will not find it because it's the budget overview and it doesn't have the word Aquarian on it. But if I look at all the sheets and I click find, this will bring me directly to the sheet that has that particular word, that particular keyword in there. In your budget book from last year, where you had that, where it was sort of that telephone book kind of book with all things, one thing that happened was that some of the descriptors were broken into different lines. And so that was very hard to read. So you'll see that in last year's, from what you had in the printed book from last year, there is a slight variation. We tried to make the descriptors make a little bit more sense. So those won't particularly be exact. So if you're looking at it and you wonder, why does this, sometimes it just ended in a strange semicolon or something like that. That's just because that's what it looked like last year in the actual.
And just, you can search by a term like Aquarian or instructional supplies, but you could also search by an account number.
Yes.
So why don't you add an
If
account
we're
number in
just
there?
looking at, so we'll look at 1111. So here's an account number, you'll hit find, and that's going to bring you to anything that has that, any page that has that particular function or account number on it. So that's another way that you'll be able to search through kind of easily.
Sarah, one more question. We've got 17 days before we have our next meeting. And there's going to be, I'm sure, a bunch of questions. We've got two more meetings coming up. Have you thought about what kind of a drop dead date you need in terms of questions for us to give you a reasonable chance to be able to answer them by the 8th?
Well, I think that I guess it depends on how many questions we get. And we might be able to organize your questions into themes. So you may all ask the same question 3 times. That's really only one question. So the Google form will allow us to identify all the questions and collect them all in one place. We'll be able to sort the questions. And I think I can work with John about providing either questions immediately or whether we're going to plan a follow-up presentation, because we've noticed that there are a certain number of questions around a particular topic, and that would warrant maybe a memo or more in-depth explanation. Or maybe you want some data, or you want us to prioritize. So we're concerned about the increase in the budget, and we may need to cut the budget by a certain amount. Could you prioritize what a 40,000 cut would look like in this particular area? And so if that's the type of question, then we might need a couple of days to turn around a memo and some analysis to you.
Well, that day's probably coming, but historically, board members will say, well, okay, well, our meeting is on the 8th. I'm going to send you a bunch of questions on Sunday the 6th and ask you to have the answers, which I think is patently unfair. So if you could think about a time frame where, okay, board members, go through your stuff, send your questions to us by X date, then that gives us a fighting chance to be able to look through things and make sure that we have the answers, or at least can direct you to where you can find, where we as individuals can find it. That's all.
Sure, and I'm happy to work with the chairperson to.
Yeah, my
work
thought
on
on
a
that was that
strategy.
by the end of January, we should try to have looked through and provide questions.
Give us a week
Right.
and we have to be done by,
That understanding that we're gonna keep having questions as we think of new things, and, we're not saying you can't ask any more questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, this is an iterative process, to state the obvious. So is the 8th going to be that back and forth? There's one question generates an answer, which generates
Yes.
two more questions.
Yeah, I think this is about us getting fluent in sort of what's in there and really having a firm grasp on what's in there. Anything that is in our way to understanding more deeply, let's ask all those questions so that by the time we show up on the 8th, we are all fluent, we know what's in there, we know sort of where we think we want to start having debate over, hey, what if we, cut this, or what if we added that, kind of this conversation. So I think it is about getting to fluency. I don't think that ahead of the 8th, we should be sending what does it look like if you cut it by 100,000? I think that should take place in those meetings, in sort of, we would ask for that on.
It's just a one-way dialogue between now and then.
I think that's right.
is there any way to know what is contractually obligated that we have a commitment on versus what is an increase that is not a contractual obligation? Or is that part of what would have to be provided?
We can pull that out. In the past, that's been the first slide that we've used when we present to the town. So it's, slide number 1, here's the contracts, here's the stuff that we don't have any wiggle room. We've already obligated ourselves to doing this stuff. So,
Absolutely.
I'd like to see that separated out of all of this. Like a sheet
Yeah.
that just pulls together the increases this year that are sort of proposed and requested versus
That's great.
everything that's in all the costs. So pull everything out of all the cost centers that we can't do anything about because we have to have water and it's gone up by X dollars and that's it. Versus, we want to add these books, we want to add this teacher, we want to add, that's really what it comes to. We can go through all of these pages, but really what it's going to come down to is we have to pay our people, we have to meet our obligations, and our work ends up dickering over the excess that you want to have to run the schools the way you want to have them, and meeting the towns, and finding that place where it matches up with the town. That's really where we spend our time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely really important. And, we know what the big drivers and the contractual obligations are. We talk about salaries and benefits. I mean, there might be some movement in benefits depending on your risk and how you view that risk. But obviously we have to provide benefits and food services and transportation. utilities and so on. We can definitely pull that information out for you.
So we're going to get access to the Google Sheet, the read access to the Google Sheet. We'll be able to navigate that. You'll also be able to distribute the printed copies for anybody who wants a printed copy. I respect the highlight and pencil approach as well. And I suspect in addition to questions we might have about how the numbers add up, we might just have basic questions about how do we use the sheet. For those who do want to use the sheet, there may be some questions. If, I mean, it may be worthwhile for us to set up an hour session, and I don't know if that would be a quorum or if it would be sort of less. It may be less than a quorum, so it would just be kind of a helpful walkthrough session for those who need it.
We've actually talked about making a video and going through the key steps. These are the key features of this particular tool.
Yeah.
How to search, how to navigate between different cost center, how to drill deeper, how to get back to the main page. So we've talked about that, and that would be useful for the public as well. That video would actually reside on the website.
Yeah, I could imagine a sort of live and structured Q&A would be helpful for people as well to navigate. Like, well, I was trying to do this and I couldn't, I clicked over here, and having a little back and forth would be helpful. But I don't know if that's just me or if it's one or two other people who would be interested in that.
It would be helpful. Certainly, it would certainly help the public.
I think there's something not rolling out correctly. So if you look at the very top of this page, where it has the high level numbers, the percent increase is 4.46. And then if you look, the overall, what you told us was 4.55, which is also on this page. Something isn't summing correctly.
Oh, I see where you are.
Math says 4.46, but the number says 4.55.
Right.
It
So
is.
we can, I've got that too.
We'll fix that for you, right?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're rooting for 4.4.
I know, yeah. Yep.
Well, thank you for all this.
Are you welcome?
So this just says you can never leave us because nobody's gonna know how to run any of this.
Sometimes on some of the roll-ups, when folks were copying it for their presentation, they copied and pasted the fact they copied and pasted rather than the full name. So if you see something like that, it's just that somebody copied it and then accidentally pasted that over itself. I won't name any names though.
Right.
Certainly no one in this room, that's right.
So everyone's clear. We really want to make sure that we all have a firm grasp on what numbers are in this and sort of what is being proposed by the end of January to make sure we get all those questions. Understanding, of course, that they're going to be moving on, right at the beginning of February to having deeper conversations with Reddit. So we definitely want to sort of respect the fact that even if we're 8 days ahead of the meeting that we might be having with them, there's a lot of work that they're doing elsewhere. So lead time is helpful. Good. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yep.
So special education, the questions around that are going to be word answers, so to speak. It's not going to be, well, okay, we had a 4% increase over here and multiply that by 6, carry the 3. It's going to be, we know we have challenges right now. We know we have increases in K and 504s and ECTs and I'm going to ask the question, are we budgeting for next year for what's going on today? Or are we budgeting next year for what we think is going to happen next year in this area? That's a dialogue, right? That's not an answer you're going to be able to send back to me or not going to respond back and forth with answers. So I go back to the February 8th meeting. that's what this is going to be about. That meeting is going to be a dialogue. We're going to hear from Jen, we're going to hear from everybody. You know, because we're all, 6 of us are going to have similar questions, and it's going to be themed around the main driver. So I guess it's a rhetorical question, but I'm just looking for a nod. That's what we're going to do on the.
Yes, I think there are certain areas we're going to have to go deeper, and this is a high level view of all pieces of the puzzle. And we're going to have to zoom in on certain cost centers. Special education, I would imagine, will be one because it's so complex, and there are contractual responsibilities in terms of transportation increases that are going up and fuel that impact special education. But there's also program decisions that we'll make. And that's where you get into that 4-level quadrant where you can actually identify a program and fund a teacher, which actually decreases, you notice, that would decrease known outplacements. And so those aren't contractual responsibilities. However, we are required and mandated to provide IEPs for students. And sometimes if you develop a strong continuum of services, you can meet students' needs within their communities, which is always our goal, but it makes fiscal sense also when you look at the cost of transportation to get students to another place, and also funding tuition as well. So just taking a look at the different levels of the continuum, I think that the administrators and the leadership and Jennifer have done an incredible job at building those layers of support that actually save district funds in the future. So, but that would be an example of a topic that we explore in greater depth.
Any other questions?
Do you want people to try it out and see if they have any additional questions?
Yeah.
Yes, that'd be fantastic
Yeah.
if we could.
Would you like to, since we're here, would you like to do that? I sent
Yeah.
everyone the link.
Yes, please.
Just open it up, take a look, and I can help facilitate just the navigation.
Yep.
It's so cool. I can see everybody's little face popping up on the right-hand side. They're in there.
Speaking of which, if I can ask, we want to include photos of each of the board members. So I know, Randy, you can choose an icon to submit if you want, or just your initials, to put into the formal budget book that we'll be creating. So if we can get headshots from everyone, I'll send an email reminder just so that it's in there. Yeah. If you go look at other budget books of other towns, it's a pretty standard thing to have a little profile for each one of the board members, and it's part of the early pages. Trying to get with the times a little.
You probably saw on the administrator side that I did have pictures of all the administrators and put that up there. At one point, they were all just pictures of Steve. Because he was the very first person to send them.
Well, that's how it'll work with us as well. Then you only get my photos, all photos.
When we look at additions to certified staff, do we have a level, have we noted a level that we're trying to hire?
Yes.
Are you asking how we budget for staff member for next year that we haven't hired yet?
So
Oh, yes, right.
a placeholder of 62 is a
Yes.
level.
Yeah, was it master step 2?
I'd have to check back to the contract.
Yes,
That's
right.
typically what we do.
Yes, so we look at a column and we don't want to budget too high, we also don't want to budget too low, and so, you know, a sweet spot, kind of the Goldilocks is really a master's degree with 2 years of experience.
So that's, in theory, is that in this document, or that's just an assumption that we have?
It's an assumption, but it's also in the document as well. So when you see new teacher for second grade at Central Staple School, it's budgeted at $62,000 something dollars. And that's a pretty standard procedure when from district to district, you pick master's step 2. Master's step 2 may be a little bit low.
You're not gonna believe this, but we've actually debated this here for years, so we should not hear that.
Oh, master step 6, okay.
Master 6, okay.
Okay, so that-
And if you have questions like that, and if you put them in the form, what we can do also is to create a little, we can add a little note on top of it so that when you roll over it, you can have more information right there.
So as you ask your questions, we'll be able to sort them by clarifying questions, the questions we can answer immediately with the more substantive questions that we should discuss further.
Would it be awful to ask? So like when you dig in, you go to the cost center, then you go into like, for example, I'm in the Samuel Staples instructional paraeducators. And I can see what we approved in column G, what we proposed in column I. Just add like a percent change. It's in the other like higher level tabs.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
No, this is adding a percent increase next to the dollar amount.
Yeah, the
in
proposed
this
dollar
level
amount,
sheet.
so that you can see the difference at that level.
Oh, so here is the challenge of that. That one lines up really nicely. It looks really good. Looks good for us.
Some of them don't.
If you, when you dig in, you'll see that some of them do not add up, do not do that as nicely. So I can do that especially, we can do that especially on some specific ones, but you'll see that some of them are just, they just do not lend themselves to that. Just because of the way that eFinance presented the information and then the changes that kind of happened last year.
Trying to find an
They-
example.
helpful with,
And
like,
instructional,
staffing.
instructional supplies would be a really good example of where those things don't always map up. So
I
if-
think, yeah.
There we go.
We really need that for pretty much every single number that's in there.
So I tried to put that up towards the top so that you can see the percent change of just those particular items. Because the lineup didn't always, the lineup really, you'll see, you'll understand.
Yeah, because some of it's blank, so like, because it's probably that cost center. is
Right.
somewhere
That
else, so
cost
it's like
center,
another
so if
group.
it's, so if it is, are you still just?
So I am, but that's instructions. That's a good example. So
Yeah, so one thing to notice is that in the approved budget and then the approved budget amount, those, I tried to keep the narratives that were kind of in there. But sometimes people realized through this process that perhaps what they wrote down last year was either too long, and so then it just truncated and or it was just unclear. And so that's where it might be blank on one side, and it was just not in that particular budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I can try to do that if you like in the index, because then anything that does match up, I would be able to
Right.
make those things match up together. So I'll do that on the index page. for
And if
you.
we search for it, like you showed us,
Yeah.
then it'll show up.
And then
so-
you would be able to see
So-
it there.
you can see on the
That's a great
screen
idea.
that some instructional cells do not line up, as you can see.
Right.
Right there. But really, an important piece of data is at the top. It's the difference between this year and next year is $2,700, which is a 6% increase.
It's actually really, really helpful to go, as much as people make fun of the old budget books and binders, it's actually really helpful and raises a lot of questions when you see it line by line by line by line, and it's like, boom, this went up by 125%. And it can prompt you to ask a more meaningful question.
Right.
So having it chunked as a whole sentence, do you know what I'm saying? Like, as
No,
a whole
I-
sentence, I'm not sure.
So
Yeah.
on that index
Right.
index
The index
tab,
will do that.
I can add in a percent change. If you go to that tab, I can. I
Yeah.
can do it right now.
You could use the 3-line.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think.
Yeah. Because I'm looking at the index now, and you can actually see sort of where there is a gap. And there's a lot of them, but it's the majority, the overwhelming majority actually do line up.
Right.
Um,
Well, if there's a gap, it's like somewhat,
right,
you can kind of explain it with
Right.
the little.
You said.
We tried really,
There-
we
so-
really tried hard to try to create the matches
Yeah.
so that they would go together. So let me show you where that index is and we can add it.
Well, even just,
no.
I think Jason brought up a point, like absolute change, because it's just like, sometimes it's a 200% change and it's like literally $40.
Yeah.
So just sometimes your eyes go to the percent, but it's like, oh, it's not really a meaningful.
That's the wrong way.
Oh, I see.
That's an interesting way.
Right, so
It
it could be a 400% increase and it could be a 0.00.
Yeah.
Right, like where we spend, an hour talking about something that doesn't impact the budget. really well.
Yeah, I think that's actually really important, is that if we show the change for this line item between last year and this year, then also show what the impact
Yeah.
to the overall budget for the change, because there are times when it's up 500%, and that is the amount of $300.
$12.
Like,
Yeah,
So that,
Right.
both matter, right?
Yeah, okay, well, thank you. Or if it's there, I mean, are we gonna,
Right.
if we get inflated number just because something is new?
Right. That's right. That's exactly right.
That's right.
That's right.
There's not a lot of them, but there are some movements.
But the good news is, if we stick with this, no new accounting system next year, right?
Right.
No new process next year. If we stick with this process, we'll have very clear visibility going forward. And that could include, in our monthly reports that we get, could be reported using these cost centers. So when we get that, the object summary, when we get any of those, we should be able to see the tracking in real time each month of, here's how we're doing against each one of these categories that we're budgeting for. And then we can actually get, sort of increase our fluency with the language of this process, so that we're just living it all throughout the year, right? How are we doing at the Samuel Staples cost center that is, this line item of that line item?
So the really nice thing about this is also that I can make some of those changes right now. So if you go to your index tab,
Yep.
you'll see that we right now can add in that, the dollar increase and the percentage.
Right. And so what I'm noticing as a view-only person on this, I can go here and I can get a link to the cell. So I'm looking at cell 16F right now, and I'm noticing that it doesn't have the formula that we put into 16E on the proposed budget page, right? So it still says 4.55. If I had a question about that, I could then send you an email with that link that I just copied. And it would
Yes,
take you directly to it, or Jason
directly
directly.
there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
We could also make it so you could comment on this, but but it would be very hard to
Yeah.
have that be anything other than just, this might be something that's like a clerical error as opposed to the form, which I think. So, yeah.
It's also a little bit dangerous there in terms of FOIA. If we start engaging in dialogue.
Right,
by
it would
way of
only
comment.
be, like, so if you
Right.
just email me, there's a clerical error, that
Yeah.
would be best.
Yeah.
So Sarah, you're going to be the clearinghouse for all these questions?
No, I think.
No, just the, only the, for the, just the, if you notice that there's, a formula that was, instead of being, a formula, if there's something hard coded, or if there's something that, just looks amiss.
Sarah will set up the form, but then all of the senior administrators will receive the information that
Oh,
is
you
submitted
all
to the
will,
form.
okay.
And so it's certainly to the extent where it's a clarifying question, any one of us might be able to provide the answer to the question.
When we submit our questions, given the volume of data, and it could be confusing when you read it, like I was just looking, I can't find it again, but there was some sort of $85,000 credit in pre-K. But like, how do you want us to make sure that we're giving you information in the form that you're gonna know what we're looking at?
So you
Do
can
you
provide
want us
the
to put an
link,
account number?
Sure.
Or-
I would say just provide as much information as possible. So if
Okay.
you give us the area of the budget, we can drill right down and then provide as much information as you think would be helpful.
Okay.
So I can immediately what my response would be. We're now formulating. For school.
Sounds good.
If you, and I don't know how to do this because I'm not familiar with sheets, but if you right click on the cell, that creates a link and then you can post that in the.
Yeah, so you can right click
Hyperlink it.
a cell and get a link that takes someone.
Will you move this to Excel?
Yeah.
It's
It's-
so
you'll
similar,
find-
it really
I'm
is.
sure, I'm sure it is, yeah.
Yeah, all the same formulas work, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
All
Good.
right, you guys got to do.
All
All
right,
right.
thank you.
Thank you very much. To
Excellent
everyone.
work.
Yeah, and thank you to the board in advance for the work that I know is pretty, you know, all consuming over the course of the next week, and we hope not beyond, but we know take up a tremendous amount of our time. Thank you very much, everyone. That will take us to public comment. Hello. If you wouldn't mind approaching the podium, stating your name, street and city.
Carolyn Oppenheim, city. Carolyn Oppenheim, Hunting Ridge Road, Easton. A couple of quick things. I've noticed, and I'm not saying this just at Board of Ed meetings, saying this kind of at all our town meetings. I've noticed a lot lately, people speaking for others, where they, and I've done it in the past, absolutely, when I know that I have friends who are supporting something, whether it's the small class sizes or whatever. But we have a lot of people that are saying, I'm speaking for all these people. We don't know if it's 2 people. I don't know if it's 25 people. I don't know if it's 150 people. But I would respectfully suggest that as boards, we request people to either write in their comments if they can't come to meetings. I understand that. I often can't come to meetings. Or to, you know, or write something for somebody to say they're, you know, they can have somebody read it for them, or come to the meetings and speak on your own behalf, because I feel like this whole notion that we're speaking for others is kind of bogus, to be honest. Anyway, about this presentation, number one, kudos to Sarah, because this is a very amazing process. I can't believe how this will be accessible to us as a parent. I'm really looking forward to looking at it more carefully and being able to see it and using the website to that effect. So thank you very much. Couple of quick things for Dr. McKinnon to think about. I'd like to find out how we, you know, adequately budget for the needs of the students that are related to COVID, that are going to be, you know, there's going to be COVID needs, emotional needs going forward, emotional, educational, but really for the special education component, if we clump that all together, it kind of misses the kids that are in need of special education separately. And so we say, oh, this increase in special education because of all this emotional component, I hope that it's separated out. It's kind of hard to put, because if you put them all together, then all of a sudden special education looks like it's so much more than it used to be, but it really is about the entire school needing some emotional support through this whole thing. I did think it was very effective for Jenny's sort of thing to pull out items that can't be changed. When I was listening to this report last year, I thought, oh my gosh, we're really only dealing with like some crazy $500,000 or $1 million. I can't believe it, but out of the budget, it was only a certain amount that you could actually be moving around. And as a parent, I was like, wow, I thought we're not really, it's not an increase so much of, you know, 5%. I know I only have 2 minutes. An increase of like only, 4%. It was really these small items that we're asking for, and they were needed items. I thought they were really important items that needed to change. So I thought that was really effective to your point, Jenny. I like the costing, but how do you account for things that are shared between HKMS and Samuel Staples? My other concern as a parent, and last year was my only year that having kids in all 3 schools and I know this sounds petty, but I think some parents will do it. Why are they spending more at Helen Keller than Samuel Staples? Why are they spending more? Why is there increased more? I worry that when you separate out the needs of Samuel Staples and Helen Keller, that there might be parental, I don't want to say infighting, but maybe parental infighting about how much is spent and why things increase more at the middle school level versus the elementary level. So while I loved the cost, the breakouts and all that,
I worry about separating them because we are a district and some things are shared and some things are important, more important from earlier education versus middle school education, and some things are more important, but when you break them out, it causes, I think, as a parent, me to question why. Again, and you might want to ask, you might want to have those questions, but you're going to get them. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take a board member comment. Good, no comment? All right, well, thank you very much, and I think we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Kevin. And seconded by Jen. Absent objection, we are adjourned at 11:28 a.m.